And your mustache is the same as many guys who are registered in a certain database.
Welcome back to Tales from the Ditch. We have a very special situation. We've only been doing one-part episodes, but tonight, since my wife is not babysitting the kids, we're able to do a second part.
Well, my whole thing is they're like, hey guys, we want to do something special with you. We should do 2 parts. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, I've been listening to this. You've done 2 parts before. So don't butter me up, because I feel all of a sudden...
Don't butter Kyle's buns, Sean. Quit buttering buns. Break rules. Break rules. I don't care what podcast rules are. They're stupid.
No, I was looking out for you. I was wanting to make sure you had...
Oh, no, I'm judging Sean.
Hey, we all are.
I'll take those back.
After hearing he made special ed kids fight for money, like,
the dog
we're all
fighting,
judging him now, yeah.
So some people who know me and they'll go, oh, I know you. Yeah, except you didn't talk to me for a 10-year period. Might think from certain stories, they go, oh, Seth is the black sheep, or he's done this. So I have an older brother. My sister's not like this. My older brother, I would say, is in some ways crazier than I am.
Definitely.
And thankfully, the Marines turned him around. But this is involving him. So, and this is the brother who, I remember 3 guys beat him up, and all he had to do was walk away, and he was like, no, and they broke his nose, and he, one by one, I think, tracked them all down. Kind of like what I did in elementary, but he did at a different scale. But because remember, he came home one night, he'd been jumped by 3 guys, his nose is broken, and you're like, what happened? He goes, I'll take care of it. And he is one, and he was like 5'6" at the time, 5'6", and he did not know how to walk away from a fight.
Jeb was relentless.
You had to kill him. He was, dude. He tore part of his abdomen in a grappling tournament and still won the match. He's kind of all right. So anyway, this is my older brother Jeb. So he had just gotten his license, and we're living on Lenwood and 4th Street. Lenwood and 4th.
Beautiful place. Doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, my house actually got bulldozed. They built the wall on Lenwood and destroyed my old house. Doesn't exist anymore.
Walk me through this 4th Street. Give me another close cross street.
McCarran. 4th Street and McCarran in
It's
Sparks.
3 minutes from here. If you take 4th Street over there.
I always ignored Sparks growing up. I'm sorry.
I would.
Yeah, Sparks has a 4th Street too. Less seedy, less prostitutes.
When I found out I was recording this podcast in Sparks, I immediately put on body armor and brought up my pocket knife.
Just a pocket knife?
Body armor, deodorant.
Well, I'm that nifty with a pocket knife. Just come at me, bro.
So Jeb, few things you should know about Jeb. He was the king of good ideas. So, for instance, he was going to go fight some kids his age in high school. I was in elementary, and I was nervous because he was taking me there to the fight. I don't know what I was going to contribute. And I told him I was nervous, so he gave me alcohol so I'd be drunk when we fought. I was 9.
How old were you? Okay.
9, yeah. And so he had a bunch of great ideas. I remember one time we were driving home, and I woke up because I'd been drinking, and he was passed out at the wheel, and I went back to sleep and then woke up at home. I don't know how we got home. So he had lots of good ideas. So this was another one. He got his license. We're on Lenwood, and he said, hey... And this is back when when King's Skate Country was still around in Sparks.
Over where they became batting cages, and they're now boiling alley?
No, it's Coconut Bowl now.
Coconut Bowl.
Well, that's where the batting cages were at one point.
Was it? What year was that?
Yeah, there were batting cages there. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So rollerblading was all the rage, and I had dyed red hair.
How good are you at Rexing?
So terrible. So bad. I only knew how to speed skate, and I would trip kindergartners. But so
that show on MTV, I can't remember what it was called, but he goes, the hardest thing about rollerblading is telling your parents you're gay.
What show was that?
I forget what it was called. It was something giant or something.
Jersey Shore?
No.
So I rollerbladed, had blood red hair, and my brother says, hey, because we'd watched Gleaming the Cube, and I know it's a skateboard film, but it had Christian Slater. And
what are you doing to the cube?
Gleaming it.
You got to gleam the cube.
You got to gleam.
Can Can you tell me how to gleam something?
So what you do?
It's after you drop in, you come back up and you gleam it, and then you get an Asian girlfriend.
He just keeps saying.
You just use the descriptor of the definition. What's gleaming? Well, you gleam it. What is gleaming?
Is it sliding your board on
We
it?
do that in church all the time, I feel like. Because the Bible says so.
You gleam things in church?
Is it sliding the board on the, what is it?
The coping? I don't actually know what gleaming the cube is.
I don't know where, I was like, there's an answer. So anyway, in the movie, he holds onto a car while he's on a skateboard, and all I have is rollerblades. So my brother says, hey, I'll drive the car, and now my mom will probably just find out what really happened. I'll drive the car and you hold on to the bumper, and we'll, drive as fast as we can, and you're holding on, and we'll go downtown or whatever. So they had just realized they need to repave our road because it was broken and bumpy. So I hold on to the back of the bumper, and I thought Jeb was going to start slow, and he hits the gas, and he's just going. And
sometimes you just need to punch it.
Dude.
Sometimes you got to race.
Sometimes you got to race, and I'm holding on to a bumper, and I make it about 30 feet and just can't hold on, and I fall off the bumper and roll, I think, 20 feet and hit a car. And I get up and I'm like in shock, not sure what happened. And Jeb comes back around. He's like, that was crazy. And I turn around to look at our house. I'm like, how far did I make it? And when I turn back around, Jeb just looks like pale in the face. And I'm like, what? He goes, your back got a little scratched up. And I put my hand on my back, and it's covered in blood. Just bleeding and it has pieces of the pavement stuck in there. So I go back, I'm trying to skate going, crying while I'm skating on the sidewalk, skating back. I think I'd been drinking again. And I get in the house, and my mom's like, what happened? And here's my infamous, cause I'm terrible at lying. I'm like, I tried to jump and I fell and landed on my back. And she's like, you jumped forward, spun in the air, and then just landed exactly on your back.
Yeah, Mom, I'm trying to get on the X Games.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, and she goes, well, what jump? I'm like, well, it wasn't a jump. I was just skating. I fell. She goes, wait. And she's she argues like a lawyer. So she's dissecting. I go, do you not care or what? And I'm just bleeding. So finally she gives up of like, okay, my son's a liar. He's clearly not going to tell me what happened. And Jeb comes in spinning his keys because our plan was he'd show up 5 minutes later. He goes, oh man, hey, what happened in here? Just came back from the store. My mom's like, oh, what'd you buy? And he's like, I'm going to my room, and just walks to his room. And my mom for 30 minutes had to take tweezers because she didn't want to take me to hospital because it costs money. She is plucking the pavement out with tweezers and then pouring alcohol out my back and just taking it out and bandages it herself. And she's like, I don't want to get infected. So she's just dumping rubbing alcohol. And I think it took a few weeks to heal because she didn't want to take me. I think I might need even stitches on one part. I go to school, and the first thing that happens, we're playing dodgeball or something, I get hit in the back.
Yeah.
And I flip down and just punch the kid. But all because my mom didn't want to take me to the hospital. I had been drinking, and my brother thought I should hold on to the back of the car. And now my mom knows the story. And that was all because I said, man, I'm so bored, there's nothing to do. And my brother decided this is what we were going to do.
So, can you sum that up what the moral of the story is?
Rollerblading.
That's a good one. Rollerblading
Dangerous.
is stupid. I don't know.
What was your comment? How did I know I was gay? I rollerbladed? Is that what it was?
The hardest part is telling your parents, was it?
The hardest part about rollerblading is telling your parents that you're gay.
What is that even from? Where did you get that from?
Oh, I can't remember the name of the show.
You guys keep talking, I'll Google.
Yeah, you can Google it. It was a show, and it was on MTV, I remember.
Teen Mom.
Close. It was right before MTV became all reality shows, and it was only Real World and what was the other one?
Road Rules.
Road Rules.
And can I just say, growing up, I wanted to be on Road Rules so bad because I wanted to kick it across the country in a Winnebago.
Yep.
And maybe meet a lady from my future and do a bunch of cool stuff. But then when I became of age, it wasn't around anymore. So now I just need a Winnebago to cruise around with.
Yeah, let's get a Winnebago.
Yeah, let's go.
Every show now is essentially road rules.
I
and
do
it's
want to
kinda
point
sad.
out, though, all right, this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then Sean can actually lead us in some conversation. It wasn't always me getting blamed for what Sean did. My parents did the opposite and blamed you, I think, a lot of the time for stuff we did. Or people would forget my part in it and blame you. For instance, we were driving around with Mark and found a metal pipe, a huge metal pipe. We were driving out, and we got in a car, and I said, I want to throw this while we're going 40 miles per hour. And we were driving, and you actually were a reasonable one, like, I'm not sure if we should. I was like, no, let's do it. Mark sped up, and I threw it out the window, and went through someone's windshield. And I think when we brought it up in conversation later, I'm like, yeah, Sean's crazy. I can't believe he did that, and they believed me. So I blamed you a lot, and my parents, when I drove through a golf course, blamed you too.
So according to Google, when I quoted you, it comes back to the show Human Giant.
Human Giant, yeah.
And it's
see?
Aziz Ansari that actually said that in 2007.
Yes, yes.
What?
A long time
More
ago.
like Aziz, I'm sorry.
It has Aziz.
Well, technically,
and it had the
he
guy
is
with
saying
the
I'm
gap
sorry
in
a
his
lot
teeth.
lately.
I know.
But why?
I didn't know Aziz Ansari was alive in 2007.
He existed.
So my parents blamed you for everything. Your parents blamed me for everything. Go ahead, lead the discussion.
Your mom was like a little more
Passive-aggressive?
passive aggressive about it. Yeah, she'd be like, "Oh, so Seth did this," and I feel like maybe somebody is a bad example, but she would never say.
She would
my
smile at
name.
you. Remember, she'd go, isn't that silly how you're a terrible friend? Here's dinner. You're like, oh.
When I lived with you,
But
she'd
she'd
be
still
like,
serve you dinner?
Yeah.
"Yeah." She was
It's a
always
win,
nice
man.
about
I
it.
still got served.
She'd be like, "Somebody ate all the bagels," so I had to go to the store, and I'd be like, "I don't know who ate all the bagels." And she goes,
Because I tell her, it
"I'm
was you.
sure you don't know who ate all the bagels." And I'm like, "No, I'm serious. I don't know," because it was Seth. But I got the blame for it.
I was getting you back for blaming me for you running away. Goodness.
Oh, my. Well,
Let's get this back on track. You know, I
Yeah, back on
apologize
track.
to our guest who's been
no,
waiting
that
here.
was a tale from the ditch.
You're a bitch.
Ditch, please.
Kyle, outside of Jesus, who are the people who you feel like have influenced you in life the most?
That's a terrible question. That's a terrible question.
Why is it terrible?
He's going to say Aziz Ansari.
I was going to say it's no.
I like this jacket. I'm 5'2". Hey.
Hey!
Have you guys ever seen, and we could, most great podcasts say, hey, check the link in the show notes. I'm sure I can
We
provide.
don't have show notes.
Well,
I'm
okay.
too lazy.
Well, maybe we could do show notes for this one. But there's this great YouTube clip of two bros from Southern California that are like lobbying against like LA County or Hollywood or something like that
For shutting down parties.
for shutting down
Yeah,
parties.
I
So, like,
saw that.
Yeah. My name's Ted, and I'm here to say, shutting down harsh parties, you're trying to remove me from all my great bros. You know, I couldn't find my place until I went to this great one-house party, and I met my buddy Tad, and we beer bonged together, and I felt the meaning of life. Like, it's just like...
Why are you
So
dodging
good.
the question, Kyle?
Well, no,
know.
actually, I'm not dodging the question. I'm actually going to go back to a comment we made earlier saying, in Northern Nevada right now, you can currently right now apply for any government job or at least run for election. And we joked
Yes.
around about what we would run for in local government because the reality is you could run for local government with no qualifications, no experience, and honestly, no knowledge and get elected to a position to where you're influencing everyday lives of everybody in your community without knowing a damn thing. And so, Seth, you and I were both joking about, and I'm sure Sean would love to do this as well, run for local office. So the question is, I'm not deflecting from your question, but I feel like this question will be a lot more fruitful to discuss. If you could run for any local office, what would it be?
Mayor.
Mayor Wildskut.
That's not correct.
Sorry.
Just stop it. Just say wild shoot because no one gets it right. It's okay.
Oh.
We're in America. Past is the past. They killed my ancestry when we
I'm just
came
thinking people see the sign, the two signs. And they say, who's Mayor Wildskut?
over. Mayor. I'd run for mayor. I'm going big or go home. Wait, is that Is that possible?
Yeah, you could actually, literally right now, if you're in Reno, Nevada, you can run right now. You could submit your paperwork, depending on when this airs. You could submit paperwork and pay a nominal fee to get on the ballot to be mayor.
Got grease the gears, huh? How much is the fee?
I don't know, but I'm sure we could. You said you have listeners all over the place. They
donate. Maybe we could get some donations.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a beer fund, right? But
I have criminal connections who could vote.
let's turn that beer fund into an actual appointment fee.
I know a couple of Russians.
Seth is running.
I would run for comptroller, and I would say I'm going to change the name to controller because comptroller isn't a word.
So what does the comptroller do?
I don't know, but it should be controller. It's a made-up word, a made-up position. I don't believe in it.
Seth?
What's the question?
As mayor,
what are you running?
I
thought mayor. I was clear.
Okay, yeah. So you're running for mayor. What are you going to do? What are you going to do for my city?
I will tear down this whole corrupt system. I will wear a Bane mask at my speech. I don't know. What does a mayor exactly do? What do they do?
You could take.
Does no one know what a mayor does?
A mayor.
I just know Mayor Quimby. That's all I know. I assume he's doing okay, right?
You could reverse the downtown, midtown rejuvenation and bring it back to what it was before, which was
heroin needles
and heroin,
porn,
yeah,
strip clubs,
yes,
vagrants.
Is that it? What else?
And more affordable alcohol
or living too.
Yeah.
Oh, so I could stop gentrification.
Yes.
Sean, why aren't you saying something? You're making a weird face.
When I think of Sean, I think of gentrification.
Yeah. When I think...
I said, don't comply, gentrify.
Oh my gosh.
I think
I don't know what a mayor does. They do they vote on
Here's
stuff?
a good thing a mayor could do. Clarify the identity of Reno, Nevada, and stop trying to make Reno, Nevada, Portland, Oregon. Because I feel like we're kind of blurring the lines between kind of this current popular hipster culture, and I'm not sure how to say this, it's jacking up the prices of things that shouldn't be so expensive.
What exactly are we jacking up?
The price of beer went from before gentrification in Midtown, downtown Reno, average beer was $4, maybe $4.50.
You talk about how much it costs to get a business license for a legal fighting ring for citizens.
So you made this comment earlier. Before you could find a $4 burrito. Now it's a $10 burrito.
Oh my gosh, the burrito price is insane right now. I can't even talk about this. It makes me so frustrating. Here's the thing. Here's the top 3 things that are driving me crazy.
This is your mayoral campaign.
This is
lower beer prices, lower burrito prices.
Forget comptroller. I'm going to be mayor.
Are you
here's
running
what I'm going to do as mayor.
Right
I'm
now?
running against you, and here's my campaign
I will
promises.
bring up everything in your history.
Medical costs.
That's not local. I'm sorry.
No, I will find a way as mayor to bring down medical costs, ATM fees, and burrito prices.
Wait a second. You still use an ATM?
Occasionally, I have to use an ATM because Winco doesn't take credit cards.
What?
It's true.
Something's not adding up here. Something is not adding up here.
A lot of things don't add up.
Oh, no.
The only time anybody uses an ATM now is if they're trying to pay A, their drug dealer, B, their pimp, C, they're trying to do something that their family doesn't know about. So
I
clearly
occasionally use an ATM for this reason. I meet everybody at Galaxy Theaters and we see a movie and I got to pay a guy cash.
Get the Cash App. You could send the money through text.
That's Rob's problem. But either way, my point is, shout out to Rob. He's a great guy. He
Rob,
always buys my ticket like 6 months in advance.
Hey Rob, when are you going to buy my ticket? I love movies.
But the point is, he takes
cash. Do you like superhero films?
And so I go
that's
to
the one thing I was going to say. Like, I feel like I'm the first guest you've ever had that does not give a rip.
And to be fair, that's all he gets tickets for. We see superhero films.
Hey Rob, I want you to take. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your life is like, but I'm saying it right now. I want to see a movie with you.
You're calling Rob out. He's going to see Tomb Raider soon. Maybe he can get on the bandwagon for that.
Would you see that?
Is it still Angelina Jolie?
No.
Are you guys going?
I'm not.
No.
Okay, then no.
I gotta be honest.
I don't even know if I'd see if Angelina Jolie was in it. I'm just...
That was the part of the conversation we asked. It's all, Seth has left the group text. And I was all, crap, everyone sees that.
So here's my point. ATM fees. It's your money. It doesn't matter why you're...
Can a mayor even affect that?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Are you going to overturn Roe versus Wade next?
That'd be fantastic, but I don't think you can.
You can. You're a mayor. You can do whatever you want. The medical industry, there's got to be some local input to this.
So this is coming from a guy who's worked in local government, and he doesn't know how local government works.
No. What if you were the mayor and the local hospital said, hey, we want to have a hospital here, and you say, sorry, unless your prices go down, or not your prices, unless your markup it reduces, you're not able to have a hospital here. Do you know how... Hey, can I tell you guys a story real quick? My mom got in a car accident. It was totally not her fault. She got hit by a guy who was negligent. He crossed 4 lanes of traffic going the opposite direction and hit her head on. She wound up in ICU for like 30 days and then in the hospital for like 6 months after that, just trying to recover. She had like bare minimum insurance, like the Obamacare, Medicare, whatever it was. She was liable to pay $1.75 million for that medical care when it was the other guy's fault completely. There was nothing she could do to avoid it. The cops came out and said, we did her skid marks, we did his skid marks, we have deduced that there's absolutely nothing that your mom could have done to avoid it. But still, my mom has to pay almost $2 million in medical costs. Now, she got a bill, and she was smart. She got an itemized bill. And on that itemized bill, through $2 million of stuff, there's a lot of stuff. And that was just the hospital, not including the surgeons and all of that. A screw that went into, she shattered everything, and her feet were destroyed. So there's a bunch of screws and plates and all kinds of stuff that went into her feet. One screw was $900. What are they making the screws out of? I think gold, these are tiny little screws. I think gold is less than that. Titanium, I guess you got to do. Medical titanium, I could understand $30, maybe even if it's a super special screw, $80. But $900, that's ridiculous. And if you ask me, that's criminal. And somebody's got to do something about it. And Mayor Sean will do something about it.
How many people would pay $900 for a screw?
What?
I caught that.
Read between the lines.
Oh, gosh. We were just talking about my mom. How dare you?
You also said skid marks twice and then said deduced. So there was deuce in there. And I was silent.
Well, I appreciate that.
So I'm sorry. I'm inappropriate.
No, it was fantastic, and I appreciate that. I didn't even realize I was talking about it.
He just stared at me blankly like I'm an idiot.
But either way, I think the mayor has some influence over who has approval on maybe health license or...
Let him. I will destroy him at the debates. Is there debates?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it right now. So I have 2 mayoral candidates. Let's play the music.
So, my candidate supports special ed kids fighting. I do not. If you vote for me as mayor, I will not have special ed kids fighting in a parking lot.
All right, rebuttal.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Here's Mayor Sean. I'd like to bring Tyrone to the stage.
Dang it.
Here's Tyrone.
I gave Tyrone an opportunity to make money.
Actually, Sean made me feel welcome, made me feel valued as an individual, made me feel more special than the special ed department ever could.
Isn't it true Tyrone received funds from your campaign, Sean? That's a silence you see that.
So I heard the 3-point plan for Sean Moss was lower beer costs, lower burrito costs, and then thirdly, lower medical costs. That's pretty solid.
That's ambitious. And if you don't like ambition, vote for the other candidate, Seth.
So, yeah. Seth, if I'm asking you for 3 points of why we should vote for you as mayor.
Yeah, so I guess one of my main points is my ideas aren't garbage like Sean. So that's number 1. Number 2, look, every politician...
You literally have a plan for the waste management system. Don't talk about garbage.
I don't know what plan you're speaking of.
You talked about putting more leaves in your trash can.
No, I said I was going to throw him over my fence in a bag labeled Sean's garbage.
That's my point. Get out of the gutter, Seth.
So, Kyle, here's the thing. I'm just an ordinary guy. I put on my gold pants one leg at a time. And unlike my candidate next to me, who's, at this point, are you eating a child? He is eating a child right now with his bare hands. I'll say this. All politicians are corrupt.
Don't tread on me.
I will be transparent with my corruption. I will communicate my corruption. I will be open to all your input and ideas and not change my corruption. And Sean, you ask a lot of good questions that need to be answered, that will be answered in this campaign. Go ahead.
A third candidate's coming to the stage. It's Kyle Wetzler.
Oh, I thought it was Ralph Nader.
Mayor?
I thought it was going to be Trump.
steal votes.
He got tired with running America.
Yeah,
Coming
there's
to
only
Reno.
2 parties here, Seth or Sean. But what does the third party say? Green Party, Kyle. Go for it.
Number 1, party. Number 2, party more. Number 3, party harder.
I will eradicate all crime that exists in Reno and Sparks forever.
I actually withdraw my candidacy. I'm voting for Kyle.
He's just to steal votes from me. You know that's why he's there. All right, I want to bring up something that Sean accused me of when we were younger, and it's true, and it's mainly just to make a dig at Sean because I
So
never
he
answered.
accused you, but it's true. So why is it going on him when it should be on you?
Because he just dropped out, so I feel like he's not a threat.
But you just won, though.
Yeah, so now I can talk about things I wouldn't
Mudsling
normally
and
do. I
trash
can
him?
be-
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
Like backhanded, let's say a fake name, Monald Mump, like what he does with people. So
Beautiful.
Sean accused me constantly when we were growing up of lost time. And this is what I mean. We would be somewhere, and he says, let's meet at my house. I'm like, sure, totally. Sean would go right to his house. An hour and a half would go by, and then I'd finally show up. And he's like, where were you? And I'd give some ridiculous excuse, and there was an hour and a half of unaccounted time. And I would never tell Sean what I was doing or where I went, but there was always lost time. And it infuriated Sean.
That's true.
And he's like, why can't you just give me an answer of what you were doing? That was also Sean.
To be clear, we would leave school, have the same path to my house or wherever we were going to meet, and I was able to make it in, say, 20 minutes, and I drive fast. It was at least an hour and 20 minutes before Seth would get there.
So
and
Seth-
I never figured out what he was doing.
So we have 2 on 1. We've got the Holy Spirit with us, so Seth can't lie. What were you doing with that extra 60 minutes?
So a lot of the time, it was me doing petty vandalism or just trying to find new areas to like drive my car through that I shouldn't. I would just get bored and be like, I don't feel like going to Sean's house. And I would just drive through fields, people's yards.
What school did you guys go to?
TMCC High School.
Together, yeah. For the first 2 years, I went to Sparks High and he went to McQueen.
I had to leave McQueen though. I went to TMCC.
Yeah, we don't
High,
like your kind up there.
Yeah. It didn't go
That is
well.
very true.
Thank God for PE for bringing up my GPA to go there. One time specifically and this made Sean really mad. There was a girl I was interested in, and she's like, oh my gosh, you have your license? I was like, hey, why don't you drive my car? I'll let you drive my car without a license. And I think she'd been drinking. So I let her drive my car, and I think she hit something, and we drove away. And when Sean found out, he's like, you told me you wouldn't let me drive your car because it's irresponsible. Yet this person you've known for 20 minutes you let drive, she crashed. You lied to me about it and then showed up to my house an hour and a half late and then left 20 minutes later because you got bored. So mainly vandalism. I would say mainly vandalism. So, yeah. And Sean has abandoned his podcast, much like he would abandon our city if you vote for him as mayor.
Wow. He brought that full circle.
I've been here the whole time.
And your mustache is the same as many guys who are registered in a certain database.
You know, Mustache March is unlike November. In November when people in solidarity stop shaving and then have a mustache for support of testicular cancer.
But
People
is that what
in the
Mustache
same
March
database?
is for, though?
No.
See, that's my whole thing. Like,
No,
so,
Mustache March is for nothing.
exactly. So
We are nihilists.
you two know me, and you guys are looking me at the face, and you guys both know that if I went a year without shaving, I still could not grow the mustache that you have, Sean.
Here's my point, though. Mustache March, you know how in regular disciplines of the Christian life, occasionally you'll fast?
You're fasting from shaving your upper lip.
Not quite, but close. You fast so that you find your dependence can no longer be on food, which is maybe the most important thing as a human besides water. But you'll fast so that you can find that your dependence is not only on God, but it also focuses your interaction and your understanding on God. So you're looking to God and saying, please give me sustenance that I'm not partaking in when it comes to food or maybe water or something else that you're fasting. Having a mustache is like fasting from visiting elementary schools. Because I have to stay 500 feet away from
I had to first.
I didn't know. Well, I knew where you were going, but I'm thinking, how often do you visit elementary schools? And second off,
Actually,
why?
Because, yeah, literally, it's physical.
Do you hear that? I just hear something spinning in the background. He's spinning the story.
It's like a fasting of physical validation. People who would come up to you and say, hey, man, you're looking good. You're looking trim. You're looking like you have I like your beard or stuff like that. Now they say, you should shave that mustache. It looks disgusting.
See, I've never had that issue. So, Seth, you have a good beard going on right now. Sean, I compliment your mustache.
Thank you.
My brother-in-law is actually one of the guys who helped start a lot of the city of Remo, Movember stuff here in
Remo.
In Reno.
Rano Sriracha.
So they started, I mean, it was right after I moved back to Reno about 10 years ago. And it was when that whole Movember thing started. Mm-hmm. And so I would help with some of their organization and some of their events. And so I would participate, and I would try to grow a mustache. And as you guys look at me, and if anybody who knows me who's listening to this knows that I cannot grow facial hair if my wife's life, or my children's life depended on it. Like,
you got a baby face.
I just can't do it. I literally can't. And so I was in my early 20s trying to grow this mustache, and I couldn't, I would grow it the entire month, and nobody knew I had anything on my upper lip. So literally at the final bash and some of the final things, I had to color it, and it looked like I was like a 12-year-old Hispanic boy.
That's okay.
It was embarrassing, but the reality is, raised a lot of money for testicular and prostate cancer, so it was worth the cost.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's not about how... You shouldn't determine the value of your mustache based on what culture says. You should feel confident through what God says about your mustache. And your mustache is good enough, Kyle. I want you to know that. So, understand. Your mustache is accepted and okay.
Jesus had a solid beard. How dare you speak for the Lord Almighty? That's another thing. Sean will abolish all faith institutions if he's mayor in Reno.
But he can't be mayor in Reno. He lives in Sparks. He's immediately disqualified.
Wait, then why was he running against me?
But I wanted to hear his 3 practical points, because lower beer costs and lower burrito costs, I'm all for. I just wanted to hear his third.
I will concede my campaign, but can we agree that burritos should not be $10?
So how would you lower them?
How would I lower the prices of burritos? I would repeal any and all food service licenses until people lower their burrito cost to $5 or under.
Can you state the job description of
You know
a
how
mayor?
bad that would be, though? You go to a nice place that doesn't have to meet requirements, and now all of a sudden you have somebody one of my biggest... So we shared this in episode 1. Seth has OCD. I've got similar OCD cleanliness things. I was probably 10 or 11 or 12, and I went to a Boston market here in town. I'm not going to say the location, but then again, it's the only Boston market.
I can point out one problem already, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I didn't go there on my own volition. I went there, and we went to Boston market, and I went to the bathroom, and I was in there with a fellow Well, I wasn't an employee, but I was in there, and there was an employee in there who went to the bathroom and walked out without washing his hands.
Ugh. But they don't make burritos.
But no, hold on. But you said you would abolish all food licensing laws. Like, I wanted Boston Market to burn, and I still do. Because of that experience. Ever since that moment, I've never been to a Boston Market. I will never go to a Boston Market.
I don't think we have a Boston Market
I might
anymore.
ask my friend Seth to help me catch a case of arson.
What I'm saying...
Anti-Boston Market. That's the first time we've had that view.
Yeah, I am so against Boston Market. Your mac and cheese sucks. Your turkey and chicken is a facade, and all your employees have poop and pee hands. I'm not going there.
What can I do to get your vote? What if I made it that Boston Market, I did a smear campaign against them?
I'm all for, you have my vote.
I know. Well, here's the thing.
You're in Sparks. Why were you running against me? You're in Sparks.
I know a few Russians. I eat in Reno
Not
a lot.
all
I
Russians
work in
are
Reno.
Criminals, Sean.
I don't think we have a Boston Market anymore. You're welcome. That's because I was mayor.
There's still one.
There's still one.
It's right next to an
is there
Applebee's,
really?
another place nobody should ever go to.
You just pulled a
frequently.
Rick Perry. Didn't even know your facts.
Have you guys seen that thing about meat glue?
Word?
I said word?
Word?
So, I don't want to name the place that rhymes with Schmapplebee's. They use this thing called meat glue, where they take all of the cuts that were cut from better rated pieces of beef, and they glue them together in the shape of the cut that you're requesting. And it's super simple. If you want to see something really disturbing, go just look up meat glue usage in popular restaurants on YouTube.
I'm afraid if people Google meat glue, they're going to get things that they shouldn't find on their phones.
People.
We might edit that out. But my point is,
Hashtag Sean loves meat glue.
my point is this. I will concede from this election if Seth can promise to lower burrito prices. If not, then I will pee on every door handle he opens in the next 10 years.
Yeah, sure, I'll promise that.
I feel like this podcast has more times than not a purpose and a drive.
I think you're
and
right.
this entire episode
I think Seth
has been...
Well, considering about 25 minutes will be edited out, it's probably time to move on.
I don't think anything should be edited out. This is pure gold.
By the way, Kyle, as mayor, I wouldn't edit out your stuff. I don't know why Sean hates freedom and freedom of speech. So
okay, I'm going to try and be serious here, even though we want to be ridiculous.
No,
and
please
I know,
be serious.
I know we're
going to.
I know we're going to be ridiculous with this question and the statement, but I'll use ridiculousness to bring it to a point of conversation here. And so, if you think about it, in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was television shows like The Chappelle Show. There was television shows out there that would, or even like Jerry Seinfeld. If you watch any of the old Seinfeld shows, there's these huge racial tones or even like sexual tones, and like all these things would be on the episode to where it would just like, we'd be able to laugh and poke fun. But if you think about it, like most of those shows could not be made today. Like, there's no way, or even like Borat, even as offensive as most of that stuff is.
You are correct.
But like as offensive as that is, there's no way that could be made today. And so on one hand, as a Christian, I'm thinking that's a good thing, because it would degrade, be derogatory, but at the same time there was some brilliance and intellect and clever writing to point out the hypocrisy in a lot of our values in our culture. But now it's this crazy there's this really strange pocket that we have to find everything fitting inside of, that is, you have to be tolerant enough not to offend anybody. And if you sit outside those lines, you're considered intolerant. But everybody wants tolerance. So most people are intolerant of tolerance or tolerant of intolerance, vice versa.
Yeah.
And so it's just really interesting of like, how, in all that, how do we begin to have, just intellectual discourse and dialogue around things? Because anytime somebody makes a stance on something, you're intolerant, and that's ridiculous.
This is what bit Dave Chappelle, though, in his new specials, was when he first started. That was the atmosphere, like you said, of it was funny, it was welcome, people thought he was awesome. When he came back and do his new specials, there was blowback he got that he wouldn't have gotten 15 years ago or
No.
20 years ago. And he said, he was like, I won't say a term, but he was like, because it's a racial slur, he's like, everyone in America has become this. He's like, it's hard to be a comic now. It's changed because he got popular in a time when you could say that. And now he's coming back where he's getting letters. He's getting yelled at. If you go on Google and look up, because he had 2 big Netflix specials. They each had 2 parts. If you Google it, you have
He's getting grilled.
Dude, you have some people go, oh, this is brilliant. You have a huge portion going, you're a bigot. How dare you joke about this? And he even said in his newest special, he goes, and he was talking about the transgender community. He says, you know what? He goes, I don't hate him. He goes, I just think it's kind of hilarious. He's like, not if it's happening to you, but he goes, I'm a comic. I think it's kind of a funny situation. And even him explaining himself to go, no, you're not allowed to think that. You're not allowed to say it. And it's so interesting to see him, who became popular in a different era, try come back in this era where he's even feeling it going, I can't say certain things. I have to, there was stuff he said on the Chappelle show that now if he did, oh my gosh, he would be ripped apart. Like,
And so, Sean, I don't know if you want to say anything. Did you?
Just to add commentary, like I agree with you 100%. It's a different atmosphere. Seth, with that racial derogatory term, like I remember one time you called me to repentance for using it on social media because I was like doing fake rap under my old rapper name MC Butt Nasty. And
my old name was DJ Diddlesticks. Don't worry.
That's perfect. We should have done a duo album. But the thing was, Seth affirmed that term, I'm just going to say it, it's like the N-word. Whether it has a hard R or not, Seth said that term is dehumanizing. And although we didn't realize it in the late 90s or early 2000s, it's been dehumanizing since the 1800s. And that it's something it's something that shouldn't be used. And at first I pushed back. I was like, first of all, Seth, this is funny. And second of all, like you're giving power to this derogatory statement by saying that I can't say it. But eventually, honestly, this really shook me to my core. To some point, I was like, yeah, we shouldn't use terms, whether or not they do or don't affect us. We shouldn't use terms that are dehumanizing to other people. And so that was an important thing, ever since then. And I appreciate Seth for calling me out on that. So like shows that couldn't be made today are shows that I think, use that term nonchalantly, or even like, I mean, there's so many shows, like even The Office. I remember like the first or second season of The Office.
Diversity Day?
Diversity
They could not
Day.
make that today.
There's no way they can make that today. That's so offensive. And I remember it was funny at the time, but I've rewatched it recently because I go through that show 1,000 times. There's a couple of things that either shouldn't have been said or at least needed to be qualified or explained a little bit. Because if you just watched it at face value, it was something that was offensive without being explained. And I understand that there's no format on a sitcom to explain those things, but there's some way to do that nowadays with Twitter and stuff like that. Or even going further back, like Married with Children.
Oh,
yep,
dude.
You could never have that show today.
But this is the thing that the whole reason why I brought this up was actually thinking about the idea of taking a definitive stance on something is because everybody wants to make sure that you don't rock the boat or upset anybody. And so that's the cultural narrative on a lot of things, whether it comes to entertainment, when it comes to music, when it comes to, interactions that we have with other people. But the reality is, when we think about the gospel, it's something that's highly offensive. It's something that's going to rock the boat. So like, I feel like in this culture, in this mindset of trying to toe the line, the church and Christianity actually has an opportunity to make a stance and declare something that is ruffling of the feathers and upsetting to people, which might lose some. I acknowledge that, but the scriptures tell us that's going to happen. But the reality is, being able to take a hardcore stance and pushing on something and saying, this is what it is. Granted, I'm not equating the gospel to Dave Chappelle comedy, but the reality is of being able to say, this is what it is, this is what it looks like, and we're not going to back down from this.
Yep.
I feel like a lot of people are saying, like, oh, this postmodern culture, this relativism, we're losing that opportunity for the gospel. Like, no. Like, if anything, this gives an opportunity for us to say, this is who God is.
Yeah.
This is what he's called us to do. This is what he's called us to believe. And as much as it might ruffle our sensitive feathers, and this is coming from a guy who is, you know, a lot of when we say sensitive feathers, they say liberal. I've always been a Democrat. I've always voted Democrat.
Yes.
I've never, like, that whole idea of ruffling feathers and ruffling sensitivity. It's like the gospel itself actually can speak to a lot of the issues that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we sell it so short. And so I think the whole reason why I brought this conversation up is, like, we've lost the opportunity for discourse, and we've lost the opportunity to have conversation about things, whether it's appropriate or inappropriate. But there's an aspect of genius and brilliance about things like Seinfeld and The Chappelle Show and other shows, Married with Children, even though was just more ridiculousness than anything else. But it's like we've missed we've lost ground because we're so afraid of offending, but we've lost the idea that the gospel itself is actually supposed to be offensive.
And to be fair too, here's the thing too. I think you need to look at motive and context too, because even talking to Sean, he had justifications or reasons. I haven't told him. I said, I'm sure you could come up with reasons for, you know, your rights or your, you know, why you want to do this or why it's not that bad or your motives.
Are we going to get into gun rights next? I can't wait.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
And the main issue was this. I was talking to him about my motive was laying down your rights, or even, you know, just if a brother, you know, if this tears him down, thinking of that. And I think there's a huge distinction between saying, hey, Sean, don't say that, it's not politically correct, or that might hurt someone's feelings, you know, culturally, it might be not okay, or I'll lose some, you know, tolerance points, versus, hey, this goes against the Imago Dei, or it tears down a brother, it causes him stumble, because there's some things, here's the crazy thing, and this is why I agree with you, Kyle. There's some things I'm like, no, we need to push even harder and be like, no, let's have this discussion. And there's some things I'm like, actually, you need to be even more sensitive on that, because you're, you know, diminishing a human being down to this word, and you're tearing down a brother.
Yeah.
And making sure it's a reason based on scripture or church history or a relational aspect, or looking at someone as a human of like, okay, this goes against the gospel, versus like, oh, why I'm a Christian, but I'm telling him not to do this for cultural reasons because it'll lose him some points. It'll make him seem intolerant. And that's an important thing. You know, if I say, hey, Sean, don't say this, a brother in Christ gets torn down from that, versus, oh, well, we're not supposed to. Because, yeah, I agree. I don't think Christians are supposed to come in and say, well, let me take this side or that. I think we're supposed to be like, no, here's a better side. Here's a better story. Here's a better perspective, a better avenue. Like, I think at Joshua, he goes to the angel of the Lord. He's like, hey, are you on our side? And he's like, no, I'm on the side of God. Are you with me? It's almost like God saying, are you with me? And I want to always take that aspect with Sean and others of like going, no, how do we bring a bear story versus like, well, don't say that because you're not supposed to. And that was the thing.
Right.
When I talked to you about that, it was about the Imago Dei. So it's some things I think like Kyle, we need to push harder and be like, no, let's have a discussion. And other things I need to be like, no, actually, you need to give those people more dignity and worth. And the word you're saying is diminishing, like a slur for black people. I go, I don't want to say that's wrong because the culture says it. I want to go, no, because they're made in the image of God.
Exactly.
And you're diminishing it down to this small term, not caring about your brothers and heralding your rights, demanding your rights above a brother. And I think it's a discussion. Brandon Evans said he said the kryptonite of American Christianity is nuance. Of just, how can we have a discussion? How can we nuance things? How can we think about things? How can we walk through them and go, Kyle, you know, instead of a soundbite, hey, walk me through why you think this. Tell me your thoughts, your feelings, where you getting at, what's the end goal, where does it lead to, what's your motive, what biblically is leading you to this and to offer a better thing. And it just, discourses, goodness, even when I've tried to be civil on Facebook, and Sean's seen this, I've seen people immediately go to just outrage, just anger. And I'm even looking there going, don't hear what I'm not saying. Like, have a discussion with it. And they just get enraged.
Well, that's your problem trying to have discourse on
I
Facebook.
know.
Well, and I want to clarify, too, what Seth was talking about. So, there's a huge difference between, like Seth was saying, between trying to appeal to culture and trying to appeal to the standard that God has set up for Christians. For example, there's a huge difference between saying maybe a word or a phrase or something like that because it's funny, but it's inclusive, and saying something that excludes a people group specifically. Well, so for example, like you were saying, Kyle, like the gospel is offensive. Yeah. And it is. It's absolutely offensive because all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And so every person spanning ethnic groups or religious groups or philosophical groups or whatever, everybody is unable to make it to heaven based on their own works. And that's why we need the work of Jesus. And making jokes about that or even pointing out those flaws in people can be hilarious, and that's okay. When you make a statement that potentially ignites the argument that one person group is better than another, I can see why that's a major issue. Being okay with that and maybe not having a severe reaction to that is potentially why, like, American slavery was something that was tolerated for 200 years or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, the whole reason why I brought this conversation up wasn't necessarily surrounding the idea that the Chappelle Show used a certain word or not. But if you watch multiple of the seasons or the episodes, like, why I say they could never make that today was not because they used a certain term. Yeah. It was more,
right.
It was more of
that's just my experience.
Yeah, which is very valid. But the reality is, if you actually look at a lot of those episodes, it's because of the way it was able to kind of put a finger in the chest of a much of the culture. And again, like, that's why I said the Seinfeld show was the same way. Like, my wife and I just watched an episode the other day that was talking about how he helped one of his immigrant friends get a job.
Babu?
Yeah. But that whole episode, you couldn't make today.
Yeah, that's true.
There was nothing overtly offensive about terms that were used on that episode. But the whole concept of, oh, well, the immigration, like that whole scene of Babu in jail, you couldn't do that because of the immigration papers.
Absolutely.
But so that was my whole goal in bringing up that comment was, like, it's not necessarily the terms, it's not the comments, which obviously those things are offensive, those things are hurtful, those things take away, but it's just even that opportunity to have a discourse around those concepts and those ideas. Sense. So, like, I feel like if we're neat-nicking over comments, we're losing a battle. I don't want to diminish how frustrating, upsetting, and demeaning some of those terms are, but then again, at the same time, if we want to pick the battle on that, what are we doing?
Right. We as a culture, I want to say a Western culture, have adopted this ideal that education or intellect leads us to some type of bliss as far as society or humanity is concerned. So, like, the Greeks, I believe, set up an education system. I think this came out of Socratic beliefs that if people are educated, that it will destroy the margin between the common person and the aristocracy. And so if people can just go to school and learn, then all of a sudden there will be no aristocracy. Everybody will be on the same page. Or even like a modern example of that, I think, is Thomas Jefferson and maybe Benjamin Franklin have said that, like, people need to be educated in order that their mythos and or strange superstitious beliefs would be eradicated so that they can think as qualified intellectuals. And once they have met whatever that standard they envisioned as qualified intellectuals is, they would no longer be the lower class idiots. And now we can all, as a society, operate freely without offending each other and without having any conflict because we're all in the same class intellectually. But the problem is, that's not true. The problem is sin. Sin infects everything. Sin infects all of us, from watching the Chappelle Show, watching Married with Children, to watching more redeemable things like, what was that show about angels? And there was...
Touched by an Angel?
5.
Touched by an Angel? Or what'd you say, Seth?
Nothing. I said Touched by an Angel.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what we watch, because...
Seventh Heaven.
The Seventh Heaven guy... And I just want to say, Al Bundy never has had any accusations to date.
And he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
So, yeah, the most morally upright, intellectual people is like Bill Cosby or the Seventh Heaven guy, or I can't think of any other examples. But
did you say Bill Cosby was
before 2013? Yeah, Bill Cosby. Everybody's like, Bill Cosby was a good dad. And he taught us all how to be good dads. Right?
So I've actually...
Come on, right?
So
he wore the sweaters. He was good. He taught his kids not to play football when it was too cold outside
is
and
this
stuff
your
like
stance
that.
as
do you need
mayor?
a pudding pop?
My point is this.
So I will say this. I actually know somebody, good friend of my family, who was she was involved in a show here locally back when the GSR was Bally's. And
That was a long time ago.
I mean, she's a trooper. She's been around a long time. She's probably in her 50s or so. And she was in college when Cosby would come to town. So again, this was like 30 plus years ago. And she was a side piece for Cosby in the midst of his heyday of the Cosby Show. And he helped pay for her college.
Wow.
So even in the midst of the Cosby days, he would call her house and her mom would pick up saying, "Don't ever call here." So
wow.
it was a facade though. Like, so yeah, 2013.
Yeah, that's my point.
Publicly it was until 2013, but like, we'll go to dinner with this gal, right? And she's like one of my wife's good friends that get together for dinner once a month. And she'll talk about how great he was as a guy. But then I'm like, did he ever do this to you? She's like, no, he's always respectful to me. But then I was like, what? He was married with kids at this point. And then all these other things come out. And she's like, I never experienced that. I never knew that. So the fact you brought up Bill Cosby.
Well,
He was married with children?
I did.
Granted, I did love the Cosby Show.
That's my point, though. From a cultural standard, not knowing anything that was going on in Bill Cosby's personal life,
Intellect didn't save him or stop him from
you would watch
failing.
the Cosby Show and you would say, this is a model for fathers. Or I think at the time, and I don't know, I'm not.
It was all about Uncle Phil.
I grew up in
Come
Nevada.
on, we all knew Uncle Phil
or
was
Uncle
our dad.
Phil, yeah.
Uncle Phil.
Yeah, he, like, why didn't Will Smith's dad want him?
Oh, that
But my
episode.
point is this, like,
We all just need a warm embrace from Uncle Phil.
is that our intellectual standing or even our education is not our salvation. And when it comes to using terms that could be controversial or even terms that could be absolutely derogatory and offensive, we have to take into consideration whether or not we have the intellectual right or cultural right to say them, or whether we have the right when we consider the law of God and the imago Dei, like you said, Seth. And that's what brought me, I think, to repentance in that point.
Yeah.
Because I said, this isn't about my cultural right to be able to say it. This isn't about the fact that I'm giving this word power or whatever soundbite I've heard. This is about the fact that I'm dehumanizing somebody who was created in the image of God, and whether or not I intend it that way, they feel that way, and I have to be sensitive to that, and that's my responsibility as a Christian. And so I think that's my point. When there is no sin, the N-word would have never existed. And so, like, operating in that framework and understanding people's value based on God, like I do feel convicted about using that N-word. And I know that's not the point you were bringing up, Kyle.
Kyle, question. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Yes.
Because he loves the gospel.
What do you think about if Gavin were to run for mayor and he's a cake supporter?
What kind of cake?
His own cake that he makes in his house.
So, okay,
Made
hold
of
up.
broken dreams.
Hold up. Let me say this. So, I will take pie over cake, hand over fist. But I will say this. I have a wife and I have a mother-in-law that make fantastic cakes. So, if it's up to cake or nothing, I'm going to take their cake.
Oh, yeah, we're not saying that.
But hold up. But I'm saying, like, if you're offering me a sheet cake from Costco, I will shove that in your face 10 times over. If you're offering me, like, a store-bought sheet cake, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to eat it. And I will laugh at you. Don't even think about serving it to me. I'd much rather have a store-bought pie because that would still be better than a store-bought cake.
All right, here's the question, and we can edit this out. So just say what's on your mind, and if we have to edit it out, tell us later.
Edit it out, please.
If your wife makes the best cake she's ever made, and you have the best pie that's ever been made
Who made
as
it?
an option.
What kind of pie? What kind of cake? I need to know these types of details.
What's your wife's best cake she can make?
She makes a lot of good cakes.
What's the best?
So, I mean, obviously, if my wife makes a really good cake, I'm going to eat it.
Right. So your wife makes you a really good cake, but then the person who you respect the most in the world for their culinary skills comes and says, here's a pie. You have one choice.
Dude, my
Cake or
wife would
pie.
be pissed if I chose her cake over that person.
I'm
She'd
not
be
talking
like,
about who's pissed. I'm talking about what do you choose.
I'm just saying I would choose the pie because my wife would be like, I want a piece of that pie too.
I
Honestly,
think the question has been answered.
I think,
No further questioning, Your Honor.
I'm just saying, like, so we watch a lot of cooking shows, and my wife is way into cooking and baking, and if like one of those chefs that we look like we watch and want, like when we travel, we'll purposely go to people's restaurants that we like, and the restaurant. So like, if like a Tyler Florence or a Gordon Ramsay, and we went to one of those restaurants and they brought out pie, and she said, hey, here's a piece of my cake, she'd be offended that we didn't get that pie from that chef. If it's between my wife's homemade cake versus some rando pie,
Sure.
of course I'm going to choose her cake.
Definitely.
Blessed is the man who finds a good
I'm
wife.
trying to say this, and this will be
Better to live
offensive.
in the desert than on the corner.
And you guys tell me this if we need to edit this out. The WNBA versus the NBA. Who wins
In a fist fight, or what is it?
in a basketball game?
NBA versus WNBA?
The top 5, or how many people are on a basketball team?
5. Well, there's 12, but there's 5 on a court.
The top 5 NBA players versus the top 5 NWBA players.
NWBA?
WNBA.
NWA? Are we talking about like
NWA.
coming straight out of Compton? Crazy name Ice Cube.
Do they have the ghost of Eazy-E? What is it?
Yeah.
Like? All right, so WNBA top 5 versus top 5 NBA?
Yes.
NBA.
I'm not even going to pander to that. That's like...
What I'm saying is
The
this.
NBA has different bone structure, higher levels of testosterone. They've had a sport longer. They have more support and sponsors, money, and better coaches.
Well, not only that, like, you watch the dunk contest of the NBA, you can't watch a dunk contest of the WNBA. And that's not
my point.
that's not a value statement. That's just a reality of the difference.
Absolutely, and that's my point. Cake has, in God's eyes...
Are you saying cake is WNBA and pie is NBA? Is that what I'm hearing you go with this?
I'm going to go on record to say that. And I'm saying that cake has the same value in God's eyes as pie does, but pie is better for the soul.
So pie can be pastors, cake can't be. Is that what you're saying?
Cake can
You
be
said that.
deacons.
K can be deacons, depending on your church
Actually,
background.
I think that a K can be a pastor, just not the ultimate authority pastor.
We're not getting into your crazy wackadoo arguments.
I know we're way over probably the allotment for this episode.
Wow, we got to edit a lot.
But maybe we're going to episode 3 here. But so you're saying pastorally, women can sit in that seat depending on the level of authority.
This is a controversial statement that nobody here agrees with. Well, I don't know about you, but nobody I've talked to agrees with me. I'm what Seth refers to as a soft complementarian. And I would say that that when I read the Bible, what I understand is that in the role of elder, a female can't have ultimate authority. And also is not permitted to have ultimate authority over men or to teach men with ultimate authority. And that's the way I understand the hermeneutic when it comes to the Greek that was used. And that's also the way... No, Dad! F you.
When did the Spirit...
Just for a comment, Seth tried to burn his cigar on Sean's arm.
When did the Spirit depart me and go to you?
And so I would say, and this is maybe something that is also more culturally appealing, and I don't say it for that reason. I'm just saying it because I literally interpret the scripture that way, and I could be totally wrong. I'm not 100% sure. But what I see is that I think that women could be something that is the office of pastor or even elder, but not what's termed as the first among equals elder or the one with ultimate authority, because the ultimate authority is Jesus pouring into the lives of all of us. And Jesus was a man, and Jesus is still a man, and he has the ultimate authority. And so I don't think that it would be appropriate for a woman to be a lead pastor over a bunch of men. And that's something that I think is culturally offensive, but I think is biblically true. But I do think that if somebody had the office of pastor that wasn't what we call lead pastor in our modern context, but that I think the Bible would refer to as first among equals, I think that is permissible.
Well, the thing I think about all this is how we define, because the reality is more times than not when we get into these types of conversations is staffing. The reality, like, who can we hire to do this job? And so I feel like you could actually hire a high level boss, competent, kick-ass, outwork everybody on the staff, female, and at a very high level. You know, whether it's a executive level director that's running the organization, executive level woman that's running a worship program, that's running kids, that's running your group system, all those types of things. Like, I think that's where we get stuck in Western culture when we think about power and when we think of title. We think pastor's automatically the top.
Right.
But
right.
I think that's where we've slipped up thinking that only somebody with pastor can have power.
Right.
And so I think when it comes to shepherding and oversight and direction, that's clearly scripturally for pastors and elders. That doesn't mean from a staffing perspective, somebody who leads a big area of your church has to be a pastor, be a woman, or be a man, you know. I think you could, I've experienced and seen churches that are really big and really successful and have great staffs and great culture where a woman's leading a lot of it. But she doesn't carry the title of pastor.
You're saying in praxis, we should definitely have high-level leaders who are women, but just not carry the title of pastor.
Well, yeah, because I think when I think of pastor, it's more not necessarily about organizational function. It's care, it's oversight, it's shepherding, and those types of things. It's not, because this is where it gets tricky, because in the Western culture, I think we blend pastor with CEO, COO, CFO. Like we blend those two so much to where it's almost inseparable. But if you think about pastor from a biblical standpoint, it's who's praying, who's teaching the word, who's shepherding,
Right.
who's caring. And I'm not saying women can't do those things, but when it comes to the responsibility of those things for the church, God has given that to men.
And very often it would be inappropriate to have a woman come alongside a man
Yep.
to shepherd them in situations.
Well, and it's
Same as the way it would be inappropriate for a man to come alongside a woman and shepherd them in struggles that they're experiencing or difficulties.
Yeah, based off of what you said earlier about sin, of just how pervasive and how God has designed us in a certain way, but the reality is sin twists that and distorts that. And so I think what we've done is blended power with pastor.
Yes.
And so
I agree 100%.
And so I think when I think of the actual calling and expectations of a pastor, I think those are for men. But when it comes to, I'm sorry, let me restate that. When it comes to pastor, the scriptures give very clear expectations of what we're supposed to do. But culturally, we've put a lot more on top of that, where the scriptures don't define that. But culturally, we've put that to men, pastoral oversight. And so I think
that's a good point.
But I think women can, like, I would be more than comfortable serving in a church or working at a church where there's a woman, like, perfect example. I think of a church that has a woman who ran most of Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola, but at separate times, running most of the organization. From a staffing,
she's a pastor?
No, she's not a pastor,
sorry.
but she's a directional leader who's helping line up, setting HR, setting financial, that type of things. But she's still under leadership and guidance of pastors. Again, when I think of what the scriptures say for pastors to do is, you pray, you teach, you shepherd, you care.
Right.
Like, when we start throwing those organizational and operational things on top of pastor, that's when I think it gets sticky.
It's tricky, too, because in the portion where Paul speaks of, Paul says, I do not permit a woman to this office. And I understand the hermeneutic as having ultimate authority, but he brings it back to a non-cultural thing. He brings it back to creation, and he brings it back to Adam and Eve in the garden. And he says Eve was...
she was tempted first.
She was the one who was originally tempted, yeah. And I think a lot of strong complementarian churches would say, this is proving that it's not a cultural thing. We're saying, no, this is a creation issue, and I agree with that. But I think it comes back to the curses that God gave. And God gave curse to Adam, saying that as you work, your work is going to work against you, and it's going to be difficult. And he gave the curse to Eve. He said, you're going to have pain in childbirth, and you're always going to be advantageous for the office of your husband. And so I do think there's definitely roles between genders. Absolutely 100%. I think that males have abused that role.
Yep.
I think that the patriarchy that was set forth even maybe from 200 or 300 AD was absolutely abusive and uncalled for. And I think that women have been not only undermined but undervalued as members of society. I mean, suffrage was only like 60 years ago, right?
Yeah, but if you think about it, the gospel teaches us value and worth of females by how much the Gospels emphasize it, or even in Paul's writing,
totally
talk about it. And so
female
this is,
deacons,
yeah, all those things. The thing that I think about in a lot of this is, since Genesis 3, men have wanted to pass the buck.
Yes.
So it's almost been this overemphasizing of correcting, of saying men can only be the ones in power,
right?
Because they're going to be the ones held responsible, versus the ones saying, I'm responsible, let me figure this out. So like,
and that's a misinterpretation.
Which, exactly.
Yeah.
And so thinking through of high-level leaders and women who are serving in a high capacity in a church. Again, I'm not saying they should serve in pastoral positions. But I am saying they should be able to lead in such a high way that they are influencing in a big way but still underneath the leadership and guidance of a church. Because what happens more times than not is we appoint all these pastors that oversee big areas of ministry to assume that they'll assume the responsibility to continue to push down the buck,
Right.
rather than saying, as the lead pastor, as a elder board, these type of things, we're going to assume this responsibility rather than pushing it on this one person in particular. And so,
I totally agree. I agree 100% with what you said. And at the end of that, a female could occupy the position of pastor or elder, just not the ultimate authority in a local church.
I guess that's where I would disagree,
Yeah,
along with Seth.
I know.
But-
That's why I'm not a pastor.
No. But still, like, I think if you look at most churches that are complementarian, they're still functionally very hierarchical. They don't elevate, they don't platform, they don't value women.
Yeah, they're
And
so
like, I think
defensive
they're so-
and afraid of
Yeah.
violating some type of standard that's been set
And
up
so, like,
that they won't
there-
even let females get close to
Exactly.
that source
So,
of
like,
power.
I feel
agree.
like they're so afraid of the egalitarian swing to where everything
Yes.
is equal, which I don't think is the case. So I would disagree with you on the female filling pastoral roles because, again, I think that's pretty clear in scriptures. But I think of how we define roles and how we define
Roles?
I love roles.
If we don't get no roles,
Hawaiian,
we don't get no tolls.
Hawaiian rolls, my favorite.
Oh, King Hawaiian rolls.
King Hawaiian rolls,
Mm.
sponsored by King Hawaiian rolls.
Mm.
I think of what we expect is where we get off. And let me say that again.
No, I think you said it perfectly.
I think how we define roles and expectations is where things get sideways. Like, I think the definition of what a pastor does is so skewed. And the expectations is so skewed. And it's so, we fence too much in.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I need to you have 2 masters. I have just short of an AA. So maybe I need to study hermeneutics a little better to have a better biblical understanding. Seth, I'm curious what you have to say about it.
I think even on a pragmatic level, what you're saying runs into some issues. Because even when you've told me about, all right, well, she's a pastor, but she only ministers, to women, or, well, she's a pastor, but and you have to keep making qualifications. Whereas I don't see it saying, oh, there's shepherds in the New Testament, and then there's shepherds who are only over half the flock, or can sometimes be over the flock, or if there's not some of the flock in the room, or if the flock's doing this, or like I agree more with Kyle than saying, no, if you're an overseer, you're an overseer. I just think we've really skewed like what that is, because I just think you'd run into problems with you going, well, they can be a pastor, but not in this sense, and they can't be this position, and they can be a pastor to this part of the flock, but not this, and they can be a pastor in this, but not this authority, and boom, 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 and you're making all these qualifications, whereas I see the New Testament goes, no, overseer is you're a shepherd to all the flock.
Well, that's where I feel
all
like
the time.
I feel like that's where culture panders, or the church panders to the culture. Okay, well, women can't be pastors of overseers, but they can see kids, or they can oversee the women's ministry, or hey, maybe they can do worship. But it's like, I kind of feel like that's almost like pandering to the culture. Like, again, when I see the role of pastor, it's that oversight.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean organizationally, structurally, like,
yeah,
there's some boss women that would probably, people listening to this podcast whose businesses and churches would benefit and flourish because they had a woman running some things.
I see Deborah in the Old Testament. She's not a pastor, but she obviously has influence and authority. I mean, that's my issue, is just when I see overseer, they're over the whole flock. It's this huge calling, and it's to everyone that, they go, okay, you're a spiritual authority, and you get into some tricky areas when you go, well, you're an overseer, but just not in this way and at this time and to this degree, and you can't do this, boom, 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 boom. But you're an overseer. So that's the thing. And I get your argument, because here's the thing. I don't want to get into a point. Michael Bird's a guy who I respect, and he would disagree with me on this. He has some scholarly arguments. He has reasons. It's not because he doesn't love the Bible. but I just don't agree with him. I think this is one of those things in the New Testament that I think is pretty clear. And as much as I've heard other arguments, I'm not going to dismiss them as, they just don't love the Bible. They just don't read it like I do. I just don't land where they are. I think the big issue, what Kyle's saying is, I think part of this argument is not necessarily that, we don't know how to interpret this. This is so unclear. I really think we have a huge pushback of, so you're saying they're less. So you're saying I can't reach the highest level. I'm like, right there.
Never true.
That's the issue though, right there is going, well, the pastor, that's the highest level. That's the greatest step. And when I think of one of the first martyrs, Stephen, he was a deacon. He was good enough to get martyred, good enough to be seen as a threat, good enough to, speak power to people and
preach the best sermon in the Bible.
And when I think of it, says
Jesus,
true religion is this, taking care of the widows and orphan in secret. It doesn't say attaining here's this level and then you get to this level. Because to be honest, the levels we're talking about, that sounds more like Scientology. I'm trying to get to the next level, and just, I don't know.
Well, from one standpoint, from a non-Christian standpoint, that whole conversational level is just how nobody's asking that. It's such a neat making thing. But the reality is, when I think of it, when Paul talks about in Colossians 1 of saying, we present everyone mature in Christ.
Yeah.
I don't think that's my wife's responsibility for our family.
Yeah.
When I read scripture, that's my responsibility of what it means for her to become that and my children to become that. And then therefore I carry that over in the church. Yeah. And so to see somebody presented before Christ mature, I think that's clearly, granted, when he says that in Colossians 1, he's not talking about pastors and elders, but the reality is, I think us as men, that's our responsibility as husbands and fathers. And then as pastors, we have that responsibility to present people mature in Christ. I don't see that laid upon women in the scriptures as I see it laid upon men. But again, that doesn't mean women can't be bosses and run big things and carry important weights.
It comes down to your definition of the office. And if you're saying that every elder and pastor needs to have this complete authority where they're shepherding all people and everything like that, then I'm okay with that. But maybe if that's the case, some churches need to reconsider certain types of pastoral positions. Do you have a pastor of parking lot? If so,
I would gladly take that because we have 40 spaces. That'd be a great job.
What I'm saying, though, just somebody who is an authority in church, but who's being poured into from an ultimate authority, by Christ above all, but also maybe by a first among equals type of male leadership or something.
I think too, there's nothing you described that they'd have to be an elder to do, or a pastor.
That's totally true.
That's the other thing.
That's absolutely true.
Well, they could do this and this, and none of that would have to be a pastor.
Yeah, you don't have to have a lanyard that says pastor. To still have the authority and respect that position deserves.
Well, that's how I was going back to, what's the role and expectation of a function? Because I think what you're stating is probably more from a staffing, functional executional role of carrying out a task.
Yes.
And that's where I feel.
And I'm just saying, have you guys seen the office of pastor in the American Evangelical Church being given to people who aren't actually serving in what the biblical role of elder or pastor is?
Do you mean like Joel Osteen?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe like Joel
Or do you
Osteen.
want me to list more hypocrites?
Maybe Jerry Falwell?
Hey.
Falwell?
You messed up now.
Hey.
Falwell.
Hold up.
Smoke weed every day.
Hey. Well, my sister got caught with weed. I play that snippet for weeks. Smoke weed every day. Anyways, are we going to see Joel in heaven?
Yes, I think that he's a false teacher, but I think that he's not to the point of... I think he's leading people astray, and he's going to be held to account for it. That's all I'll say. How about that?
I just want to keep going, but Seth, are we going to see Joel in heaven?
I think, all right, I'm going to quote Romans 10, because I actually think it does speak into this a little bit, and I actually would like to see your guys' opinion on this.
Sean keeps trying to wrap this up, and I keep poking the bear.
Seth is trying to wrap it up. I go to sleep over there.
I'm sleeping right here. I'm sleeping. I got a floaty for your pond. I'm going to sleep there tonight.
So Romans 10:6 says, "But the righteousness based on faith says, do not say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven, that is to bring Christ down." Or verse 7, "Or who will descend into the abyss, that is to bring Christ up from the dead." But what does it say? The word is near you in your mouth, in your mouth and heart. I feel like it's putting an emphasis on we don't make these huge statements on here's who I know is going to heaven, here's who I know is going to abyss. I feel like we proclaim who they should follow, who's the truth, who's the life. We proclaim, hey, we know without Jesus, this is what you're going to have. But I don't know that we're supposed to have this huge pursuit based on Romans 10 of, so who do you think's going to hell? Who do you think's going to heaven? Based on the fact that I don't know what their last days go look like. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like based on that, it's, and maybe I'm misinterpreting the context, but when he brings that up, it says the righteous do that. I don't know. I can look at Joel and say, hey, if he truly doesn't believe in Jesus, if he hasn't been covered in the blood, he's going to hell. But I don't know that I'm supposed to have a huge pursuit of whether I know if he's covered in the blood or what's going to happen. If I can say this, if Joel Osteen's hope is not in Jesus and does not have a true repentant heart of an allegiance to the King Jesus, he is going to hell. But I don't know if I'm supposed to make a huge conversation of how that's going to end, or if in the end on his last day, if that's going to be true for him. I don't know. That's what I'm seeing from Romans.
But as Christians, we are called to confront a false gospel being preached.
Yeah,
we are.
Well, I agree.
That's what we do.
I agree with that, but I think at the same time, what our culture more times than not wants to do is poke fun and make fun of.
That's true.
So
that's probably what we're guilty of.
Yeah, well,
on this podcast.
I wasn't trying to say that, but yes.
You were.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things, like, I feel like more times than not, it's not the articulation of the gospel that saves us. It's a matter of, do we just have faith that apart from Christ, I can't do it?
Yeah, and salvation has nothing to do with us tearing him down.
Yeah.
It's I feel like our responsibility as ambassadors of Christ and communicators of the gospel to say what I saw he said on YouTube was false.
It was her. Well, and that's,
I can't say what he's saying right now or today or on his last day.
There's no way I want somebody in our church to read him, watch his sermons, go, like, be a part of any of that. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, like, at some level, there's how many people that go to that church? And it's
like 15,000.
I mean, it's huge. You know, it's like they're playing.
Unless there's a flood or a hurricane, then nobody gets to go there.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and
but it's still one of those things. Like, again, I'm not trying to defend his ministry or say that he's valid, but it's one of those things. Like, who knows what God is like? I feel like for me, the table's a lot larger than what we want to define.
That's
and so
true.
Again, would I want anybody to read his stuff? Go to his church, listen to his podcast. Like, I got a Christmas card from a distant relative on my wife's side that was a Joel Osteen thing, and I just started laughing. I'm like, what in the world? But then on the other hand, I'm like, I know this person genuinely loves Christ, even though they're sending me a Joel Osteen card. But I know that they acknowledge their depravity and their need for something. And for some reason, somehow, God's used them. God has used Joel and his wife, Victoria?
I don't even.
That babe?
Nancy?
Phyllis.
Regina?
Phyllis. Well, that's the thing. I want to point out in that passage, it doesn't say we don't rebuke. It doesn't say we don't call out false teaching. It doesn't mean we can't call something heretical. It doesn't mean we can't denounce things and say, what do you do? Like Arius, it doesn't mean we can't say that's evil. What I see from that is I have in the past, and this is just in my depravity, been so quick to be like, this guy's going to hell. This guy I know for a fact. And I think it's a thing of caution that the righteous don't just be so quick to say, I can look at Joel Osteen and go, oh, I will oppose the evil prosperity gospel that he teaches, because it is. I've seen it destroy lives. Yeah. But the main point of the passage was I want to be careful not to go, I have these concise discussions where I declare, I know for a fact this guy's eternal destination. Because you could have looked at Paul before his conversion and said, well, we know where he's going. That's the only thing I'm saying, because I, more than anyone, think we need to openly oppose anything false and evil like that. But the passage goes, okay, it doesn't speak to it. Instead just goes, I don't think the righteous sit there and go, hey, so, this guy's going here, guy is going here, especially because it can be very easy to almost revel in this guy's going to hell. Like, I affirm the doctrine of hell, the belief of hell and the punishment, but I don't want to ever take this great joy in it or excitement of like, dude, that guy's going to suffer, and be excited. Because when it says, for the Lord is willing, none shall perish, and Paul saying, I'd be condemned if it meant they didn't, go to hell. I don't think we're supposed to take a joy in it. So I think it's more of, I say that verse as a caution that I can, and I'm not speaking for you guys, I can in my own arrogance and my youth revel in that or make declarations that I can't 100% speak or know for certain when I don't know his last day. All I can do is oppose what I see, speak truth, oppose what is not right, what is not godly, think and ponder what's, things of above. And that's more that I think the verse is more a caution, and I don't want to use the verse to speak into what it doesn't. The verse doesn't speak about, never rebuke. It just speaks about that discussion when we start going, well, I know that dude's going to hell. And the reason I bring it up is because I've been guilty of that. I was so quick my first year of Christianity to go, well, clearly this group's going to hell. So certain. And so I was just such a pompous ass about it. So that's why I bring up Romans 10. That's more, because I really think, like, don't try to take the chapter, say something it's not. That's what's speaking into. That's more the point I was getting at. So.
We've talked about American evangelicalism and voting laws or lack thereof, and gun rights and abortion and all kinds of things. But so far, the most disputed thing has been that the Apologetics are or are not a decent band. But I think
Full
we
confession,
maybe gave that
I've
a
never
run for the
heard
money.
the Apologetics band.
You
Full
should go
confession.
look it up.
Spotify, here I come.
Yeah, we should look it up. But I think our discussion maybe on complementarianism and talking about just the state of the pastorate in general with Joel Osteen and stuff, maybe would give that a run for its money. We'll see.
I think beer, burritos, and lower medical costs is more important right now.
Hitler said he would reduce burrito costs too.
He did not. That is not true. That is a false truth. That is post-truth. Anyways, this
Fake
has been
news.
Tales from the Ditch.
Fake news.
It's just alternative facts.
If you have any comment or question, we would love to discuss it. So please email us at talesfromtheditch@gmail.com or visit our website to subscribe to the podcast at talesfromtheditch.download. Kyle Wetzler, do you have anything you want to say to close us out?
Hey, 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 hey.
Shout Engine, Player FM, iTunes, download. If you even just Google Tales from the Ditch, it's, I think, the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, it is. 5,000 downloads.